Awesome. Thanks a lot, guys. My name is Hamdan Azhar. I'm really excited to be at ODSC, and I'll be talking about a topic that is very relevant to a lot of people because a lot of people use emojis. How many people in here have never used an emoji? 3 people. Okay. 4. All right. I'm sure you guys will learn a lot and in this talk. And for the rest of us, many people ask me, how did you become an emoji data scientist? Because it's kind of weird. The first time you hear it, like emoji data science, what is that? Is that even a thing? I was like texting friends, you got to come to my talk on emoji data science. And they're like, what is that? They thought I was trolling them. And the answer is that for many years, I've lived a double life. I've been a data scientist by day. I've been fascinated by the whole process of identifying a problem, finding data, cleaning it, analyzing it, telling a story. Love that stuff. I also love emojis. People text me emojis, and so some people remember the first time they saw a Ford Mustang, or they remember the first time they saw Coldplay in concert. Or for some of the older people, the Beatles. I remember the first time I got a tears of joy emoji, which is the most popular emoji in the world. It's the emoji where it looks like the person is crying, but they're laughing at the same time. And I remember the first time I got it because I asked the person who sent it to me, does this literally mean you're crying and laughing at the same time? And she's like, no, it's an emoji. It's like a metaphor. And I was like, wow, this is so cool. And the story I'll be discussing today is how I realized that one day I could combine my passions for data science and emojis and become an emoji data scientist. This story also involves my transition from industry data science to indie data science. This is my attempt to reflect both of those in emoji. Fortunately, today's industry does not actually have, like, I worked at Facebook, so we didn't really have tar smoke factories. It's a bit of an exaggeration. The scientist with the beaker is there just because chemists and biologists still have a stranglehold on the public's conception of science, so that's what the scientist emoji looks like. To an indie data scientist, where I just sit at a computer and do cool things. My story involves me realizing that my academic experiences, my professional experiences in statistics and data science empowered me not just to ask questions in advertising or neuroscience or demography or political campaigns, all of which are fields in which I had the great privilege of working in. I learned a lot working in these fields. But data science is a way of looking at the world. It's a way of answering my own innate curiosity about something like emojis. And the realization that I could take these same skills I had used in academia and industry and apply them to emojis was kind of, it was really profound for me. And I realized that the only thing keeping me from becoming an emoji data scientist was myself. So one day I stepped out of my own way. So today I'll tell you about a journey, and I'll tell you about the birth of Prismoji, which is a data journalism lab I started in New York. And this journey starts, as many journeys do, with me scrolling through my Facebook newsfeed at home. So I'm scrolling through my Facebook newsfeed, this is last summer, and I see this in my feed. This is right when Brexit has happened. So England has left the EU, or they're in that process, they voted to do it. And I see this article, The World's Reaction to Brexit in Emoji. And this, I'm like, wow, this is so cool. I've always wanted to do this. Because emojis as a form of sentiment analysis, I wanted to do this my whole life. So my first reaction is they beat me to it. I hate them. But also, it's like, oh, really cool. Let me see what they did because I'm excited. Now this is actually a real thing. So I read the article. I click to the article. This is not a summary of the article. This is the whole article. As we would say at the University of Chicago, there is no data in this article. This is the whole article. This is not someone's blog. This is Quartz, which is it's a reputable publication. And the article is just a list of politicians and the list of emojis that the author thinks describes what they're feeling. It's a very, I don't really have the words to describe my reaction to this article, so I'll use an emoji. That was my reaction to this article. And this really inspired me because I read this and I'm like, okay, I think I can do better than this. I think I can actually use real data to understand how people respond to Brexit using emojis, using data. So I spent the next 3 days, I locked myself in my room, I engaged in a 72-hour one-man hackathon. I downloaded like 500,000 tweets about Brexit. I learned how to use the Twitter API through R. I learned how to download emoji dictionaries from the Unicode site. I learned how to match the Unicode to the tweets using regular expressions. Obviously, I'd done lots of these things in other capacities as a data scientist, but I'd never done this particular thing. But I spent 3 days, I hacked on it, and I got published in Motherboard after 3 days. This is my article. You can check it out. Here are the most popular emojis from the Brexit reaction. And this was a really meaningful experience for me, because I had an idea, I made it happen, it got published a few days later, and this is not the type of reward cycle we have in academia, where it often takes you have an idea and then 4 years later a paper gets published, or in industry, where often we have great ideas, but very little of that ends up getting exposed to the public. Often it's kept internal, and the public doesn't really benefit from that in a very obvious way. So I think this is a teaser of why I think journalism is so interesting to me, because it's fast-paced and it's also accessible to the public. It's open. So let me walk you through what I did in this article. The question I asked was very simple. How do people use emojis to react to a major political event in real time? Very high-level question. Getting the data was fairly straightforward. Twitter has an API very well documented. I used R to sample tweets from 5 hashtags related to Brexit. I removed retweets. I used regular expressions in R to extract the emojis from those tweets. And now everything from here is really, really basic. So I'm sure there are some very hardened, rigorous data scientists in this room, and I apologize to them in advance, because everything I did was really simple. I counted the emojis in those tweets. And then I compared those counts with a normalized database of emoji usage on Twitter. And then once I did that, then I looked at the hashtags in those tweets. And I compared emoji counts for different hashtags. That was the whole article. But even doing something so simple yielded some very interesting conclusions. So here are the top emojis in this data set. And on the whole, so the thing here that made me happiest is that the flag of the UK is number 2 on the list, which tells me that my code worked. Because if it was the flag of Papua New Guinea, then I would have had to go back to another 3-day hackathon and figure out why my code didn't work. What I found interesting here is that there's a very robust mix of different types of emojis. There are happy emojis, there are sad emojis, there's anger, there's a tear, there's a thumbs up. It's a very robust mix of emojis here, which suggests that people use emojis to express their emotions. It's not something trivial or something random, or it's not all hearts, or it's not all British flags, or there's a lot happening here. So the obvious question is, these are the emojis in our data set, but how does this compare to emojis in general? So a crude way of doing that is, as I mentioned, comparing emoji usage in our data, in the Brexit data set, to emoji usage on all of Twitter. Luckily, there's a great site called emojitracker.com that has a running count of every emoji that's ever been tweeted. The site, if you are prone to seizures, then do not go to that site, because it's like flashing, it's like crazy. So I compared the rank and the frequency of emojis in the Brexit dataset with the rank and the frequency on Emoji Tracker, and I figured out that these are 5 emojis that over-index when people talked about Brexit. It's the UK flag, which over-indexes 400 times per, okay, that's good, the code worked, we're onto something here. The thumbs up, the clapping hand sign, the crying face, see no evil emoji, are used more when people talk about Brexit than when they talk about other topics on Twitter. So the next step is, how can we use hashtag data to understand what these emojis mean? Because emojis are not being tweeted in a vacuum, they're appended to tweets which have text, or images, or links. I mean, there's a lot of content there. So the concept I started with here is that we have a hashtag distribution in our Brexit dataset. So we looked at 5 hashtags: not my vote, vote remain, EU ref, Brexit, vote leave. And we know how those are distributed in my set of tweets. That's what that distribution looks like. This is not that interesting. This is the baseline. But now I can pick any emoji, I can look at the hashtag distribution for the usage of that emoji, and I can compare that to this baseline, and I can say this emoji over-indexes on these hashtags. Does that make sense to everyone? So, in a very straightforward concept. This is very similar to what they do in biology. I have a master's in biostatistics, so the idea of signature sounded fancy to me. So it's like genetic signature, hashtag signature is like, we're all trying to make the world a better place, aren't we? Once we look at the hashtag signatures, here's a sampling of what we find. So we find, for 4 selected emojis, the British flag emoji heavily over-indexes on vote leave. people who use the British flag emoji in their tweets are also more likely to use the hashtag vote leave. Presumably because they were happy vote leave happened, so they're using the British flag hashtag. The party popper emoji heavily over-indexes on vote leave. And again, this is kind of mind-blowing for people who don't think emojis are that meaningful, but like this is something real. It affected lots of people's lives. People were sad, people were happy, and there are people on Twitter using the party popper emoji cheering that Brexit happened. Like, emojis are real. These are real people and real feelings. The crying emoji, this is called the loudly crying emoji with the 2 tears, heavily over-indexes on vote remain. The praying hands emoji, so there's a lot of controversy about this emoji. I thought it was the praying hands. Some people say it means thanks, it means please. It means like, please save my life, do something. It means a lot of things. It's a very nuanced emoji. So I haven't, I'm a data scientist. The emoji data science part is a bit self-attributed, so don't take my word for that. But here, I think we see very interesting that emojis correlate with the hashtags people use. Emojis are not being used randomly, they're being used to express certain emotions. This is a very crude way of summarizing what I call the hashtag signatures in this data set. And here you see, again, a clustering of the heart, the loving heart, and then many of the sadder emojis. The negative affect emojis are clustering with vote remain. Vote leave is clustering with the happy emoji, the celebratory emojis and the British flag. EU ref is sort of a neutral emoji. It's just like the EU referendum, so it's distributed across the board. And yeah, I mean, that was my analysis of emojis and Brexit. It was really cool. There were a few interesting findings along the way. And one of them is something that might seem straightforward to those of us who use emojis a lot, but even very basic and simple emojis can encompass a variety of meaning. And just one example, the thumbs up can be used both sincerely, but it can also be used ironically. And I'm saying all that as a caveat to our findings, right? Because we can say these are the top 5 emojis, people are really happy, but actually emojis are pretty complex. So the thumbs up emoji, someone can say exciting times ahead, embrace the change, or this ironic use of the thumbs up, cheers to everyone over 50 who voted us out of deciding our futures for us, thumbs up emoji, which is like really fascinating. So that was my analysis of Brexit. I was like, this is really cool. I like working with emojis. There don't seem to be a lot of people in this space, so I can just jump in and like take over the whole discipline and give a course on, give a lecture on an introduction to emoji data science. And then I was like, okay, what else do I work on? What is my next project? And I have a sister in high school, and she came to me one day. She's like, oh my God, like Taylor Swift, Kanye West, they're having a big feud. Like, oh my God, it's crazy. I barely know who these people are. But I'm like, if my sister who is in high school and who is very hip knows who they are, people probably know who they are, and maybe there's something interesting here. So that was my next project. It ended up getting published as a data scientist emoji guide to Kanye West and Taylor Swift. And what happened here, does anyone know the context of the feud? No one. No one here knows what happened. One young lady is very embarrassed to admit it. A few people know it, yeah. No, I'm sure a lot of people know, but you guys don't want to admit it. When I give this presentation, when I give this presentation at high schools, the kids start jumping up and down. They're like, me, like they all know what happened. So what happened is a rough summary and an apology to the hip hop enthusiasts, is that Kanye West and Taylor Swift had a feud. Kanye West used a picture of Taylor Swift in one of his music videos, a picture of her, I think, nude, surrounded by rappers. He also included a lyric in one of his songs. I think the lyric was, quote, "I made that bitch famous." And Taylor said, "This is wrong, what are you doing, this is crazy." And Kanye said, actually, Taylor gave him permission to do that. And then Kim Kardashian stepped in, everyone's favorite. And she stepped in and she's like, she leaked a Snapchat recording of Taylor Swift giving Kanye West permission to do this. Became a huge, huge deal. Justin Bieber stepped in, Drake stepped in, all of the celebrities took sides in this battle. It was like rap battle of the celebrities. Yeah, it was crazy. So what I did is in a very straightforward manner, this is the week after this feud has broken out, I look at the emojis people use to talk about Taylor Swift and Kanye West. And here's a rendering of the top 5 emojis for each of these personalities. And the fascinating thing here, when I did this, is we see our friend, the green snake emoji, which I've never used. I never even knew this was an emoji. But apparently it's like an emoji that symbolizes deceitfulness or being like a snake, like just like betrayal, lying. untrustworthy. It's a very cruel emoji for teenagers. And I can say this knowing there are no teenagers here to correct me, so I'm very happy I can do that here. And what happened here is that, so that's the first interesting thing. Second interesting thing, besides the snake, Taylor has a lot of positive affect emojis, right? The heart, the kissy face, the heart eyes. Kanye West has, his number one emoji is the tears of joy. People don't seem to be, he doesn't have that love. He does have the fire emoji because people think he's lit, which is cool. Another way of visualizing this same data, and I think this is where this enters more of the realm of data visualization, is, this is a complex data set, and I want to be able to tell a story based on this. So this is a crude way of visualizing the emojis in this data set. Now, everything towards the left, these are emojis that are over-indexing on Taylor Swift. Everything towards the right, excuse me. Everything towards the right, I hope I don't lose my voice. Everything towards the right are emojis that over-index on Kanye West. And the x-axis is just what I call emoji valence, which is if an emoji appears in 10% of tweets mentioning Kanye and 1% of tweets mentioning Taylor, then I give it a valence of +10, it's towards Kanye. And the y-axis is the overall frequency of the emoji in the data set. And this is really interesting because you see the distribution of emojis falling out where a lot of the feminine emojis are heavily clustered towards Taylor Swift. Unsurprising, the pink heart, the red heart, the kiss, the rose. The American flag is there. Very interesting because people, Taylor Swift is country music. She started out as a country musician. She's very popular in sort of middle America. People even think she voted for Trump, but she refuses to comment on that. But here, this is just data. This is not us going to the data with a hypothesis. We're just looking at emojis people are using, and we find this. The snake emoji is there. So I should have finished the story. The snake emoji was actually a targeted campaign of snake bombing, is the official term. What happened was that Kanye supporters were so angry at Taylor Swift that they went to her profile and started commenting snake, 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 snake. I think she got 800,000 snake comments on her Instagram alone. Instagram banned the snake emoji in a comment for that day because Taylor Swift claimed it was cyberbullying, and Instagram took it down. So yeah, emojis are pretty powerful. This was really fun for me, and it led me to wonder, is there a broader pattern in how people use emojis to talk about their favorite celebrities? As DJ Khaled might call it, what are the emojis of fan love? And fan love is a term, I think DJ Khaled invented it, where it's a very catchy, simple term. It means fans who love celebrities. So I looked at 5 celebrities, Beyonce, Justin Bieber, DJ Khaled, Drake, and Rihanna. And I looked at their top 5 emojis during the same time period. And the fascinating thing here, it might be too small for you guys in the back to see, the fascinating thing here is that 4 of the top 5 emojis that people use to talk about these celebrities are identical, except for DJ Khaled, who's an outlier. Those 4 emojis are the heart eyes emoji, the red heart, tears of joy, and the loudly crying emoji. And this just blew my mind when I saw it, because there's no collusion going on here. There's no targeted behavior. This is 250,000 random people all across America, all across, this is English language tweets, so presumably America, Canada, maybe the UK. And for some reason, their behavior is converging towards this pattern where they're all using these 4 emojis heavily to talk about these celebrities, which is just fascinating to me because we don't learn emojis in schools. It's not part of the curriculum. It's like we learn words, but we don't learn emojis. But nevertheless, out of this chaos, out of 2,800 different emojis, people are converging on a certain set of emojis to talk about a certain topic, which I thought was really fascinating. We also see heterogeneity, to throw in a statistical term. We see that Beyonce has the queen bee emoji. People use that. That's her 4th most common emoji. Justin Bieber has the fire emoji, the lit emoji. Drake also has the lit emoji. Drake, again, doesn't look too well in this plot because his number 1 emoji is the tears of joy, whereas everyone else's top emoji is something positive, which led me to Google, why is everyone laughing at Drake? And apparently, that week, Drake had challenged someone to a rap battle, and it did not go well. Like, people laughed at him. Yeah, like, cause yeah, I don't know. I've never listened to the guy, but apparently, yeah, I don't know if he's a good rapper. I won't comment on that. Yeah, so that's really interesting. So DJ Khaled, the outlier. What's so interesting about him is that he has sort of branded himself as a self-help motivational speaker or guru through Snapchat, and these emojis have become a part of popular lexicon, largely thanks to him. He talks about major keys, the major keys to success, so people use the key emoji. He talks about bless up, keeping it 100. Just a very interesting set of, this is data reflecting what's happening in the real world or in the social media world. And it's fascinating because it's all around us. And what other interesting patterns and insights are there in emoji data? Who knows? So an example of something I found interesting is, why is the loudly crying emoji so often used with celebrities? I personally don't use this emoji. I thought it was like a very sad emoji. But again, the data reveals, and personal interviews reveal, that for a lot of people, it's an ironic emoji. People use it as an extreme sign of, I'm laughing at you. I'm laughing at you so hard, I'm crying at you. But it's like a very extreme type of emoji. But also, people use it when they talk about their favorite celebrities. I mean, I'm never sure which of these are ironic. So the best one here is a fan tweeting about Justin Bieber. This has actually got me in tears. 4 loudly crying emojis. I'm so proud of how far you have come and what you've achieved. And that's not his mom, that's just a random fan. Yeah, emojis are reflecting very powerful emotions. So let's turn to something a little bit more serious. And that's the elections. So on election day, I had a streamer running and I was streaming tweets throughout the day. And at the end of the day, I was like, okay, what is here? Is there anything interesting? And I had this idea of looking at emojis only after midnight Eastern time, which is when the results had sort of become obvious. The election was called at about 2 or 3 a.m. Eastern, but by midnight, like, the math was heavily in Trump's side. So looking at tweets after midnight mentioning Trump and mentioning Clinton. And what's so fascinating here is how just one image can reflect the sentiment of a nation, essentially. Where on the Hillary side, you have, sad emojis, praying emoji, the blue heart emoji, the biceps emoji, just like genuine torment, pain, anguish, all of that is reflected in those emojis. And on the Trump side, you have this very strong dichotomy between supportive emojis, the thumbs up and the clapping hands and the party popper and the 100, and then also negative emojis, the rolling eyes emoji, the thinking face emoji, which you might call like, what the fuck just happened emoji. And you have the middle, I don't know if I was allowed to say that, I'm sorry. And then the middle finger emoji, which I had never seen like in one of these charts, because I do this a lot. I've never seen that before, but people were using the middle finger emoji to tweet about Trump or to tweet at Trump after the election, that when they heard the results, which is really fascinating. I mean, it's really cool to see that. Another way of visualizing the same data set is to look at tweets mentioning Hillary Clinton and do a pre-post comparison. So this is not exactly a time series. It's a crude approximation of one, where everything on the left are emojis that are more heavily used before midnight on election day. Everything on the right are emojis that are used more heavily after midnight on election day. And you see that shift from day to night, from night and the shift of night and day, where throughout the day people are tweeting positive emojis, thumbs up, applause, the blue heart, you got this girl emojis. And after midnight, there's sadness, anguish, broken hearts, very interesting findings. And I think my intention in doing this is to sort of convince folks who are not interested in emojis that this is really cool. There's a lot of interesting stuff here to be mined, and I want more people playing around and entering this field and applying more rigorous techniques, because I think there's so much to be learned. Some examples, so I did some time series also on election night for 4 different emojis. And essentially what I did was for these emojis, I broke down the time series for tweets with the emoji mentioning Trump and tweets with the emoji mentioning Clinton. And you notice that the American flag spikes in tweets mentioning Trump after 2 a.m. when he declares victory. You also see that the middle finger spikes for Trump starting at 9 p.m. So that spike happens much earlier. Starting around 9 p.m., people are like, oh my God, he's winning, middle finger emoji spikes. The US flag emoji only spikes when it's obvious that he won. You also see the crying emoji spikes for Hillary Clinton also starting at around 9 p.m. And I think if you just match this with the calendar of when they call the states, it very closely approximates that, which is just, it's so interesting. And then you also see the praying, what I call the praying hands emoji, spikes for Hillary, not at 3 a.m., not at midnight, but at about 11 p.m., which is right when they thought Michigan or Pennsylvania might turn the other way. That's when Michigan and Pennsylvania were too close to call. And I was at a watch party and people were literally like, oh my God, it's so close, she can do this. And lo and behold, you turn to Twitter and people are using the praying hands emoji at 11 p.m., which is just like so cool. Another way of visualizing this is to make word clouds. I love word clouds. And here I pick 3 emojis and I just make a word cloud of the top words in tweets with that emoji to get a rough sense of how are people using that emoji. And the thumbs up is, congratulations, President, congrats, make America great again. The middle finger is, that's what that emoji means. If you wanted to know, then our data validates that popular conception, which I'm sure people have known for hundreds of years, but our data validates that. And then the thinking face emoji is just like what just happened, right? People, wonder, rigged, racist, really, like all of these words just show up with that emoji, which is really, really interesting. So that was my work on emojis and election day. You can read that. You can read all of this at prismoji.com. Next, so after this, we're still sticking in politics for now, just because I feel like talking about emojis and culture is really cool. High school students love it. It's a great way of getting people. It's a way of making data science accessible. So I think it's really easy to make data science seem hard and complicated. What's harder is to make it seem inviting for young people who want to enter the field. Because if all they hear is Hadoop and Hive and clusters, then it's not inviting to a broad swath of people. And I think if we want to make the field more diverse and representative, we have to show how data science can be used in all types of problems. It's just a way of understanding the world around you. And that's what excites me so much. But the politics stuff is also important. So my latest analysis I did is on the raised fist emoji. So what I called it is the emojis of resistance. And the backstory here is that a few months ago, Trump announced the Muslim ban or the travel ban. And all of a sudden there were issues at the airports, people were getting detained. Thousands of protesters rushed to the airports all around the country. And I'm in New York, and my sister happens to work for the city government. So she's like, I'm going to JFK, do you want to come? And I'm like, okay, cool. So we go to JFK, there's hundreds of lawyers there. It's like a very exciting scene. And my sister goes over to the government, folks' table, and she's making a difference. And I'm just standing there, I'm like, what do I do here? So I go up to the lawyers and I say, I'm an emoji data scientist, how can I help? And their reaction was not very charitable. I dug an even deeper hole for myself when I followed it up with, I watch a lot of Law and Order, and that did not help either. So I realized, okay, maybe I can't help the lawyers. But I went back home and I was like, actually, there's data here. There's data to be mined about how people use emojis when they protest. And that's what got me into this. So that was published in the Huffington Post, and in a few places, Mashable made it their Snapchat story for the day, which is a really big deal if you're a teenager. I'm not a teenager, but teenagers like that. There was an article in the French press, which initially I was very offended by, because I thought they were calling me a small inventor of emojis. Because I don't speak French, but that's what it looked like. I was about to call some of the lawyers from JFK to help me sue Mashable, but then I used Google Translate. It actually means a small inventory of emojis that people use to protest Donald Trump. So I was like, okay, Mashable can survive for another day. And what I did here is that I picked 4 hashtags that people were using during these protests: no ban, no wall, not my president, the resistance. Also, the Women's March had happened the prior week, so that was still a very common protest hashtag. And I looked at these protest hashtags and I said, what are the emojis people use when they use these hashtags? And the interesting thing here is across the board, the top emojis are the red flag, the red heart, the fist, the American flag. Those three show up across the board. And the fist emoji, you can say, okay, that makes sense. It's an emoji of solidarity. It's an emoji of protest. But the American flag and the red heart are very interesting. They're noteworthy. Because I think a lot of people have the conception that protesters are anti-American. They just want to burn things down. They're coming at it from a place of anger. But actually, a lot of them are using the American flag emoji. A lot of them are using the heart emoji. They seem to be coming at it. It's possible. This data suggests that, not being a political scientist, that it's possible that protesters are coming at it from a place of love and patriotism. Which is, again, really cool, that just emojis on Twitter, something so random and obscure, reflects that underlying sentiment. So if you look at some sample tweets with emojis, I love all of you protesting. You're the best. Heart emoji, no ban, no wall. A picture of the Statue of Liberty hugging a young Muslim woman. Such a beautiful picture. Heart emoji, American flag emoji. Muslim ban, no wall, not my president. Just, I think, data that complicates existing stereotypes about where protest comes from and what it represents in society. So that was my analysis of emojis of resistance. And I think my main takeaway to this audience, and to many audiences, is that all of you too can become an emoji data scientist. The data is out there. I actually released a tutorial, Emoji Data Science in R, at prismoji.com. It's very straightforward. I walk through beginning to end. How do you download tweets using the API? How do you find the Unicode patterns? How do you match them using regular expressions? How do you visualize emojis? I'd love it if you guys started playing around with that. And I think this is really cool because it makes data science accessible to a larger audience. I do want to shout out existing work on emojis. There are a few pieces that have come out that I thought were really good. So MailChimp did this visualization of emojis in subject lines about 2 years ago now. This is an emoji co-occurrence diagram, where connections between emojis are emojis that are used in the same subject. And this shows underlying clusterings of emojis, where you see the fruits are clustering and the food emojis are clustering. I think something I do want to emphasize throughout all of this is that the hardest part in all of this experience is the storytelling. And this is why I think the importance of storytelling in data science is often overlooked, where I view data science as an end-to-end process, right? You define a question, you find data, you clean it, you analyze it, you tell a story. For me, that's a huge part of data science. And I realize data science means different things to different people. But coming at it from a lens of how do you use it to have impact, how do you use it to tell a story that resonates with people, that storytelling part is key. And it's subjective, and it requires a different type of skill set than just like munging the data. It's more than that. It's like understanding the topic and figuring out what is the unique contribution this makes to the discourse. Spotify, apparently 2 days ago, I don't know if they knew this talk was happening and they wanted to get ahead of the curve, but they released their own emoji analysis of the emojis people use in playlists to describe artists on Spotify. And I wish they had done a better job telling the story here, because that's what I feel like is so important about this, is that I feel like the obligation is on us as data scientists to both present the data and to tell the story also. And that doesn't mean we have to do it ourselves. We should talk to the domain experts. We should talk to people who understand it. But I feel like just putting data out there without what is the story or why is this interesting, it often hurts more than it helps. Some reflections. I think, as I mentioned, I'm really excited and passionate about journalism. I think it's a really, it has so academia, I was in academia, I didn't like it because it was a very long return cycle. Industry, I didn't like it because everything is just closed, it's not really shared. Journalism is fast-paced, and it's shared with everyone. The downside is that there's a sacrifice in rigor. And I think that is apparent from the elementary nature of much of the work I've presented. But I think better collaboration across journalism, industry, and academia is, it's essential going forward. Where I would love to see this work augmented with folks from computational linguistics and natural language processing and figuring out how do we incorporate this into that existing literature. I think industry, right? If you ask, like, how can you guys help in this room? I would, all of this is based on sampling data from the Twitter API. So I think I would love to replicate this using broader data sets. So if your company has the Twitter fire hose, or like you're mining social media data and you have huge samples for me to play around with, let's chat. I think lots of companies have Venmo. People use emojis on Venmo, Slack. Like emojis are just becoming a big part of the industry. And I think that's where there's a value in data storytelling, apart from data science, or as an augment to data science, in that many companies are very strapped with their data science resources. So even though they have data that could be very beneficial to society, their data scientists are busy making sure the site is running and trying to get customers and doing the nuts and bolts that are needed to make that company work. And all of the exciting potential of that data often gets overlooked. What I've learned is that the talent to work on these types of projects is easily available. There are tons of data scientists who are not fully satisfied in their day jobs, as I was in industry, and who are looking for cool projects to work on. There's a very high demand from news organizations interested in publishing this kind of work. What's needed is better access to data, other social networks, and I think more broadly, the argument I'm making isn't just restricted to emojis. It's for a broader view of data journalism in society, and just applying data science in the public interest to address questions that folks aren't really looking at that much. And nothing here is completely novel, right? So academics are looking at bits and pieces of this, but it's not broadly available. Industry, I'm sure, is doing this, right? But that's not publicly shared. And I think that's where there's a benefit in indie data science to fill some of those holes. So I don't know how we're doing on time. We have about 5 minutes, so I'll end there, and I'll thank you for your time, and I'm happy to take questions. Thank you so much. Yes?
The person uses 5 hearts in a tweet. Do they count 5 times per count, or only once?
In my count, they only count once. But that's because there are a lot of bot accounts that are trying to manipulate the game that way, so correct for that. Yes? So I have not done that. I saw a paper recently that did that. I think Emoji to Vec, but I think that's something I'm definitely interested in doing going forward. Yes?
A lot of the emojis have different color schemes.
Yes.
In colors, did you filter those out, or did you just leave them as they were?
I aggregated all of them into the yellow emoji. But that's a very interesting topic for future research.
Yeah, I wondered that with the fifth one, because there's...
Sure. Yes. Yes, young lady over here.
How much of the challenges have been using emojis from different sources that are, different from even an iPhone to an Android?
Yes. That's a good question. So in my work, I use Twitter. I aggregate across devices. Breaking across devices is interesting. There's a paper from, I think, a group in Wisconsin that found differences in emoji usage by device type. I think that's an interesting topic for future analysis.
So you can look different
Yes,
with your message, yeah.
definitely. Yes. Definitely. So the default keyboard is there. Also, the iPhone, the way it gives you your most frequently used emojis isn't a very transparent process. And I think that could lead to just like status quo bias, where people use the same emojis because that's what they see in their keyboard. Yes? Yeah, that's a great question. I haven't done that yet, but I think that would be very cool to look at. Yes?
Do you see a difference in emoji usage after the iPhone started suggesting emojis in their text suggestions?
I have not looked at that. But you think a difference in just types of emoji usage or volumes or? Yeah.
I feel like I started using emojis more once they were being suggested.
Uh-huh.
I was like, yeah, I like that.
Yeah, I think emojis from a tech perspective are a new product, right? So this is like product adoption. And I think that's, it falls into that existing literature. Yes?
Do you analyze emoji usage outside of English-speaking markets? So I don't know, in the Middle East or India or...
Yeah, so most of the work I published is using English-speaking emojis. I did do something comparing, so India and Pakistan, their independence days are one day apart. So I looked at hashtags comparing emoji usage when these two countries are celebrating their Independence Day. The most interesting thing I found is that the green heart is heavily over-indexed for the Pakistani Independence Day, and the Indian Independence Day is the praying emoji, which is almost never used to celebrate Pakistani Independence Day, which seemed to be, a very interesting finding. Yeah. Cool. Yes. Yeah, definitely. I mean, so I used to be in a psychology PhD program. I spent 1 year and then I got bored. But I think this is rekindling my interest in psychology, emotion, computational linguistics. I think all of these I think I respect academia as a way of going very deep in a question and figuring out how does this add to human knowledge, whereas this is more designed to get folks interested in the field. But I think that's a valid way of going into it farther.
Yeah, I think if you analyze the text, you can get more information.
Mm-hmm.
And another question.
Sure.
What does it take to be a data journalist? What does it take? Like, what skill set and
Sure.
what background knowledge you need to?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I think you find folks going into it from a heavy data science background who then just practice writing a lot, practice communicating a lot, figure out how do you apply data science to a topic that the public cares about, that there's a demand for, which is it could be anything, right? Politics, gentrification, crime data. There's just so much out there. Or often the other way, you have journalists who then teach themselves programming or statistics, and they become data journalists. But it's a very wide open field. It's not like you need a certificate in data journalism. I feel like most people in this room, if they are interested, would be able to enter this domain, just because there's such a shortage of technical people in journalism in general. Any other questions? Okay, thank you so much for your time. Thank you.